sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Corkboard. This week we are still talking about, we have our live show on Valentine's Day, February 14th. It's going to be at Chateau Bellevue here in Austin, Texas. Live will be Shelley Siegel, but before Shelley Siegel, we will be live.
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be taking live questions from the audience. As we were talking about how to do this, it occurred to me that it's Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be on dates.
Wait, it only just occurred to you?
Well, that I knew. I knew. But a lot of people are going to be bringing their dates.
Yeah.
And their sexy questions. So I am so looking forward to the person with the question, with the bold question, and the very uncomfortable partner shrinking into their chair as they ask it. So that is going to be a moment that none of you should miss.
Definitely questions about butt stuff.
So much butt stuff.
So we will also have food available to on us, included in your purchase price, and we will have drinks available for purchase. So if you don't feel brave enough when you get there, have a couple drinks and see how you feel.
That's where the good questions come from.
Oh, it always is. So getting back to the dark and heavy, yeah. Carol, can you tell us what SNAP does?
SNAP provides self-based peer support for survivors, their loved ones, and advocates who are doing the work in this area.
Okay. And that is in the greater Austin area?
Well, I am supporting the Austin area, but it's a global organization.
Okay.
So we have support group leaders around the world.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, that's always good to know. Christy, did you have a question for Carol?
Yeah, I mean, we're excited to have you on. We're excited to talk about the work that y'all do. But more than anything, I mean, just today, the Texas Archdiocese released their list of credibly accused priests, right? So 286 credibly accused. How are y'all reeling from that? I saw, there was a candlelight vigil last night. I mean, this has to be really upsetting and at the same time exciting because things are moving forward. I mean, how did that land for y'all?
You're right. We do have mixed emotions about this because on the one hand, it's a step in the right direction, but in the other hand, the Austin Diocese list is mostly deceased priests or priests that they've taken some action on. So the Austin Diocese list is incomplete, and we really want them to put a list out that includes all accused religious people. So that would be nuns, deacons, friars. So just go down the list of anyone within a church organization who's been accused.
So these credibly accused, and that term that they're using in their own internal investigation. I mean, I know they hired outside investigators, but this is not being done by the Texas Attorney General or anything like that. This is by them.
For them.
Yeah, and so does it feel like enough at this point?
No.
So to clarify, so our viewers understand, the list that has come up is a list not from the state.
Correct.
It is a list that they produced themselves, which mostly consists
of deceased
and already sanctioned people.
Yes.
All right.
And most of the people on that list from the Austin Diocese are people who perpetrated more than 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So statute of limitations. Yep. Okay, I'll take that as a yes. So do you feel that there is a need for there to be more of an investigation from the state?
There needs to be an investigation from our local prosecuting district attorneys and law enforcement. Right now, our Attorney General doesn't have the legal authority to initiate a grand jury investigation. The laws in Texas are structured differently than Pennsylvania or Michigan. Our district attorneys have the prosecuting authority and investigating authority. The AG can't require one.
So really it's local, it's bringing it home.
Mm-hmm.
And so this all was prompted, I mean, you mentioned the Pennsylvania grand jury report, and that was back in August. Of course, we've talked here, and we all remember the Spotlight reports that started coming out in 2002. I mean, so what prompted the Texas Archdiocese to do this, and how did we get here? I mean, it seems like this has been just ongoing almost 20 years now of sort of pretending to do something or starting to do something about these abuses?
Right. So I'll start with a case out of Texas, which involved the Lutheran denomination. And that
Raised
case,
Lutheran.
Same here.
Ah.
And that case was brought in Marshall, Texas, against a priest in that city. He had 14 victims. And after the state prosecuted and convicted him, then there was a civil suit in 2004 against the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. And they settled. It was the first large payout in the United States ever. And there was a settlement agreement where the ELCA said that they would implement policies and procedures. There were guardian ad litems assigned to oversee the settlement agreement to make sure that everything they said they were going to do, they would do. So fast forward to 2018, when I tried to make a report of the abuse that had happened when I was a child, their website was non-functional.
So that they were not living up to the terms of the settlement, really.
Right. And talking with other survivors, both who were recently victimized as a child or as an adult, and in the past, there's still a pattern of moving the clergy person around, not informing the next community that he goes into. And so that behavior is still ongoing in the Lutheran Church 20 years after a settlement agreement. And the reason that's important is the Catholic Church is, now they're on their second round, because the public pretty well thought this had been handled back in 2002. And we're seeing now that that wasn't the case. There was a lot of publicity and lip service to the policies that they had implemented, but in reality they weren't following through and executing. Right? So there's a face that's put up to give the appearance of being thorough and compliant, but in reality the same behaviors are still happening, just they're hidden and covered up. So with the Catholic Diocese, when the Pennsylvania grand jury report came out, SNAP and other advocates started pressing their AGs to request a similar investigation, and it just has spread. It's been a grassroots movement by survivors and by SNAP across the states. We've been asking survivors to write letters to their AGs requesting internal investigations. And more survivors have been coming forward and sharing their stories about what happened when they reported, what's happened, and how the churches haven't been
Receptive.
And so that's how different AGs, New Jersey, Illinois, Michigan, Missouri, they're now doing investigations. And states like Texas, several people have written AG, and myself included, and they responded that they don't have the jurisdiction.
Not empowered with the authority to actually investigate.
Right.
Okay.
So we dropped the ball, it sounds like, in 2002. There was now this growing grassroots movement. It seems to be picking up momentum. But what happens now? I mean, where do you see all of this headed?
Well, in the state of Texas, we're hopeful that local prosecuting attorneys will initiate investigations for the diocese where they have jurisdiction. And we're hopeful that the stories that are out in the media will embolden and give survivors encourage to come forward and share their stories, either with SNAP or with the national hotline or law enforcement.
I mean, it is heavy stuff, and we have a few people in the chat actually saying, of course, today is a topic that would piss them off.
Yeah.
But it's an important topic that I think we all have a right to be outraged about, that this is still going on. The fact that there are still Catholics or people attending these religious institutions where they know that these things have happened and have gone on and have been protected is definitely salt in the wound for many, many victims. I do want to say that we have lines open for calls, and that is 512-686-0279. Of course, it does not have to be on today's topic. It can be about anything, but we are speaking to SNAP, so if you do have a story you would like to tell or questions about how to help yourself or someone else who has been in a similar situation, please, by all means, call in. You can also go to the Atheist Experience and click the Call the Show button. That will bring you to us as well. With that, should we take our first call of the night before continuing with the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a number more questions, but I'd love to hear from Peter and just kind of see what's on his mind.
Peter, you are on the air. Peter?
All right, we'll come back to you, boss.
Yep. Try and get over to your phone, take it off mute, and we'll get back to you. So what were some of the other questions you were talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, we're obviously talking about Texas and the news here today, and that's in light of things that are happening nationally. But I guess I'm wondering, what is the state of the Union SNAP worldwide, the Catholic Church worldwide, and just progress towards addressing these issues?
It's a hard question to answer.
Sure. I mean, we are talking about parishes and dioceses, all over the world. I mean, thousands and thousands of different organizations. And so I know it's hard to really take the temperature of a global room, but I'm wondering if there's a sense that things are moving forward in a productive way worldwide, or if it just feels like more frustration, more beating your head against the wall.
Well, I think it's a matter of becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I feel our culture is moving in the right direction, but it's slow progress because we're talking about whole societal systems, right? And the issues around the stigma, shaming, and blaming, even when it's child sexual abuse survivors, really needs to be addressed, and it's a difficult topic for people to wrap their mind around.
Sure.
Even within, so if I look at my own lifetime, I had my grandmother's generation, my mom's generation, my generation, and now my daughter's generation. In my grandmother's generation, you didn't say anything.
Right.
You just were
kept
quiet.
silent.
My mom's generation was more of the, get over it and move on. And my generation, there's still a lot of people who follow how they were brought up, but I feel there are more women standing up. So the Me Too movement is testimony, I think, to more women taking a stand for being
Broader
mistreated,
changes.
right? So the issue is not one of the Catholic denomination. So Harvey Weinstein
Weinstein, yeah.
had, 60 victims. Larry Nassar had more than 100 victims.
Hundreds, yeah.
The priest who was prosecuted out of Marshall, Texas, over 20 years ago had 14 victims. So this isn't a Catholic issue. This is a cultural issue.
I mean, in the fact that, as you said, the previous situation that you described was in the Lutheran Church, which, granted, Catholic light, but still not Catholic.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to show, the Lutheran pastors can marry and they can have families. And it goes to show that it's not restricted just to those who are sexually repressed. It is a systemic issue.
It is.
I had a question for you, but before we get to that, I think we do have Peter back on the line. I think he tried to call back, and let's see if it works. Peter, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
we can.
Howdy.
Hi.
Awesome. Sorry that dropped there. I don't know why that happened.
Oh, that is perfectly okay. What would you like to talk to us about tonight?
I don't know if you have the call screener notes, but I'd like to talk to you guys about abortion. I've heard about what's happened in New York, and that's just got me thinking about things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically I became an ex-Christian last year, like end of last year, and I've just been working through some things about my new worldview and just decided, I should probably take a look at abortion, and instead of just doing what I've been told for the rest of my life, I should form my own opinion about it.
Sure.
Right. So did you have any particular question for us that might help you out?
Yeah, first of all, I'd just like to get an idea of what you guys think. I only just found this show, so I haven't listened to your opinions before.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd like to figure out what you guys think about it, and then maybe just ask some clarifying questions and see if I can follow your train of logic and stuff like that.
Sure. Christy,
Yeah, well,
do you want to go first?
yeah, fair enough. I have to say, in some ways, I'm a little bit of a black sheep when it comes to this issue.
Real quick, Peter, would you be able to turn us off on your laptop or whatever you're watching us on?
I've got you on speaker on my phone. Do you want me to plug in some headphones?
Yes, please. We can hear the reverb from our own voices.
No worries. I'll just do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so while you're settling that, I just want to say, for me, this issue really comes down to framing. I myself am very pro-choice. I definitely believe in a woman's right to have an abortion. I sometimes get frustrated in the way that the pro-choice movement frames things. When we talk about making exceptions for victims of rape or victims of incest and these different types of things, and say, in those instances, maybe we should allow an abortion, but perhaps not in other instances. And we get into these sort of nitty-gritty things. For me, it feels like it's really missing the point. It really misses the crux of the argument. And for me, that...
The word choice?
Well, of the idea that whether we're talking about a woman's right to bodily autonomy, whether we're talking about a woman's right to choose, and all of these things, that to me misses the central element of this question. And the central element is, what is a fetus or a zygote or, whatever stage of development we're talking about, what is a fertilized embryo? And if you believe that that is a person,
A mass of cells.
or a mass of cells is really what it comes down to. And so to my thinking, and I speak only for myself, not for Megan, Secular Sexuality, the ACA, to my thinking, if you believe that that mass of cells constitutes a human being, then the rest of it doesn't really matter. This idea of how that mass of cells came to be, the idea of whether rape was involved or these other things is really superfluous, because I don't believe that somebody should have the right to choose to end another human life. That being said, I don't think that there's any good reason to believe that a mass of cells, that a developing zygote is a person. And I know that that is a sticking point for a lot of people, and I respect that. But I have to say that I don't believe that a fetus is a person in the same way that you and I are. And I think that it's really important that we take this argument and these debates that has all of these sticky different issues when we talk about, what if there's rape involved? What if there's danger to the mother? And we talk about all of these things, that to me misses the point. To me, the point is really, is this a human life or is it not? And I think that we can say pretty conclusively, in my opinion, it's not a human life on account of the way it works in nature, on account of how many natural spontaneous abortions happen in our real life.
Until it is no longer technically, and when I say technically, I mean technically a parasite, and until it can live on its own, it is not a functioning human being.
And that's very much my perspective. And I recognize that that's a minority view, but I hope that, Peter, that answers at least one perspective and one point of view.
May I offer,
Yeah, thanks.
may I offer another point of view?
Yeah, please.
So my family of origin, my grandparents and their children grew up on farming in Minnesota. And I grew up around a lot of dairy farms, and people had horses to help bring the cattle in. And in farming, we always save the heifer, or we save the cow. If she's having problem with pregnancy, we always terminate the pregnancy to save the cow. And same thing with horse breeding. If there's a problem with the pregnancy, we terminate the pregnancy so that
There can always be another pregnancy.
There can always be another pregnancy. So we save the mare, we save the cow. So why would we place a human woman as being less than a cow or a horse?
So there is a focus on the safety and the life of the mother. Yeah,
Right.
I hear that.
And I come at it from 2 points of view that kind of cross at a point, which is first, along the lines that you were saying, Christy, of at what point does it become a human? And my opinion is it becomes a human at the point in which it can survive on its own, not as a parasite, but as its own functioning human. Which, of course, as we all know, is pretty far along in the process. In addition to that, I do believe in bodily autonomy. I'm not going to tell a man what to do with his body, and he better not tell me what to do with my body. It's my own body. You have your body. I would never think to tell you what to do with your body. I mean, full bodily autonomy, as long as it's not affecting negatively another human being, then you go for it. Whether it's self-destructive or not, that's your choice to make.
You have the right to choose, the right to your own autonomy. Yeah.
Right. So, Peter, I hope that helped getting those three perspectives.
Yeah, so thanks for that. That's really helpful. I guess I just want to acknowledge that, there's, from what I could tell with the debate, there was sort of, if you go back to if it's a human or not, and then if it is a human, then we don't kill it. I guess that's sort of one perspective. But but then you're sort of saying that even if it is a human, the mother should have the right to choose what happens with her body. Is that correct?
Are you asking me, or are you asking?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm saying that up until the point where that fetus can survive on its own, because up until that point, it is just clinically a parasite. That is what it is. It cannot survive on its own. It is feeding off the host, which is the mother. It will not survive outside of the host's body. Up until that point, I do not consider it to be a human being.
Okay.
A human being, once it becomes able to survive outside. Now, granted, we can discuss, generally speaking, the time frame that becomes a viable option. But that is far and beyond past, what the quote-unquote heartbeat bill would say. Mm-hmm. And it's far beyond what many of the laws that are trying to be pushed through Project Blitz say.
Yep. Yeah, so I guess during my time as a more conservative Christian, I listened to people such as Crowder, Ladder with Crowder, that sort of stuff. And I don't know what you guys think about him, but he was saying a sort of a counterpoint to that the viability of a baby would change depending on what sort of medical attention it could get. So, something might be viable a lot earlier if we could give birth to it in a good hospital in a Western country and things like that. So would that change, I guess, where you draw that line?
Generally speaking, no. And this is coming from someone who was a premature twin born at 6 months. I do not... Whether my mom would have chosen to abort me or not, honestly, that was her choice. Whether I do or do not exist, that was her choice.
Yep.
That being said, I'm here now. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, so you're here to work with what you've got.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in that same kind of vein, I know that when we talk about rape and these other things, it does become a more complex issue. But from a general standpoint, your mom had the choice to have you from the moment that she had sex. And I'm certainly not saying that, you had sex and you have to suffer the consequences.
We are definitely pro-sex
Not
here.
the argument I'm making, but I do think it's somewhat universal to humans to choose to procreate. And I think that choice continues on past the point of intercourse.
Of conception.
Yeah, past the point of conception.
Mm-hmm. Does that help clear that up a little bit?
Yeah, that's good. I'm just trying to think if there's any more problems I have with that.
You can, of course, always email us, too, at sex@atheist-community.org. If you think of something after this call that you want to bounce off of us.
And that goes for the rest of you. I mean, I know that this is a complex issue that has a lot of viewpoints, and I really appreciate what you're doing, Peter, which is challenging your own beliefs, which is looking at what you've always believed and wanting to get a more detailed understanding. And I stand beside you on that. I have thought about these issues for a while, but even as I say it, there's room for doubt, there's room for reconsidering. And so I would love to hear from anybody in the audience that disagrees with what I had to say, that disagrees with what Megan had to say, or Carol. I mean, we would love to hear from you. And this may be, I'm confident this will be an ongoing discussion on this show. So we would love to hear some different perspectives.
May even be a main topic at some point.
No question.
And of course,
cool.
If you don't mind, Peter, I'd like to shout out to everyone watching. Say, hit that the like button and the subscribe button. That's how we get out to more viewers. With that, Peter, did you have any other questions for us tonight?
Yeah, I think one of the other things relating to that issue was say if I'm not entirely sure because I'm in Australia and I don't keep up with American news that much, but with the New York case, if they can abort up until birth, at which point it would be considered a human being and viable. And I guess you could say that the mother has a right to do that because it's still in her body. But I was thinking, like, just because we value autonomy, does that mean that we should use our autonomy to, like, hurt other people, I think, if that sort of makes sense?
It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you, Christy?
So I think I get what you're asking, and to clarify, and forgive me if I'm not as up to date on the specifics of the New York law that you're referencing, but it's my understanding that would be more relevant, I think, to Carol's model. This idea that it's not the opportunity.
Health of the mother.
Yeah, it's not the opportunity to abort a fetus all the way up until the time of birth. It's the opportunity to make a judgment call about viability and safety. It really comes back to that idea. To me, I don't want to mince words, but to me that's almost separate from the other abortion debate.
It is a bit.
If you had, if you're a field medic and or you're an ER trauma nurse or any situation like that, there is a responsibility to triage. And if you can only save one of two people, you'd want to choose the person with the best chance at life and the best, viable options moving forward. So that feels very different to me. This New York law, we're talking about situations where people are in imminent danger. And that, to me, is less about whether a fetus is a person or this or that or the other. It's more about you're in the ER and you have two gunshot victims and, only one spare kidney available for transplant or whatever it might be.
Who has the better chance?
Kidney's a terrible example, but
right.
It is about sort of a numbers game. And that's an uncomfortable place to be when you're talking about human lives. But in reality, you sometimes have to make those hard choices. And to my understanding, that's what this law is specifically in reference to. Do y'all have any information that I might be off base there?
I don't.
Okay.
I was wondering as well, if I can just, one more thing with that. Wouldn't it be easier, I'm not a medical doctor, so I wouldn't know, but wouldn't it be easier just to do an emergency cesarean or something, get it out there, rather than go through the whole process of aborting a baby, and then when it's cesarean, you can adopt it out or something like that?
Well, and I think maybe we have a fundamental misunderstanding here of what abortion versus
because that's not a specific
emergency
medical
delivery
procedure.
Is.
An abortion is not. That's not like a listed medical procedure. There are different types of abortions or things that we put under that umbrella. So I'm not a doctor. It's very much my understanding that if a emergency C-section was the best choice for all involved, then that's the choice that would be moved forward with. This law is protecting people's rights to use other means or whatever means necessary to save the life.
And I would say I can only imagine that it would rarely come up to the line of full term. I can only imagine the horrific circumstances where that would have to be the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's because my Christian friends, their instant reaction is, people just want an excuse to kill babies that are fully formed, which totally isn't what it is. But it's sort of hard to get past that emotional reaction to start with.
My understanding completely lines up with yours. People are making these arguments. I mean, you can't log on to Facebook without seeing people making these arguments. But I don't understand that to be the reality at all, that this is not a form of birth control that we're talking about here. This is about triaging people in emergency situations and trying to save lives and do right by them.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Really honest and kind intentions behind the law, and not just we want to murder people.
Mm-hmm. And hey, if there are doctors or legal experts in the audience, tell us where we're wrong. Feel free to give us a call. Please email us, and we'll definitely correct that as soon as we can. But as it stands, as non-doctors and non-lawyers, that's very much our understanding.
As lay people, as they would say. So, Peter, if that is all, thank you so much for your call.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate your time.
Of
Absolutely.
course.
You have a great night.
You too.
Wow. So we went from really touchy subjects to
Other touchy
really touchy subjects. Welcome to the show.
Yes, this is how it goes.
Usually we like to talk about, you said butt stuff.
I
So,
said
you
butt
know,
stuff.
more fun things. But yeah, I do think that these are really important issues in the news right now.
are.
And I'm glad that we're able to shed some light on them.
We do still have lines open, so 512-686-0279. Obviously, you don't have to call in about SNAP, but if you do have a story or a question, please give us a call. With that, Christy, did you have any, before we take the next caller, do you have any other questions for Carol here?
Yeah, I really did. I know we touched on this a little bit, just about the direction that things are headed. What is the next step, you feel, and what can we be doing to pick up the to carry the torch, to pick up the ball and run with it?
Well, I feel the next step is for the district attorneys to investigate their diocese, to get the list of everyone who's made reports to law enforcement and the survivor advocates groups, and truly investigate those lists of names.
Do you feel that there is a sort of hesitancy on the part of the local judiciary to investigate this?
My sense is that our legal system requires that we be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, meaning that there's 99.9% probability, not even probability, like a jury.
There
should
has to
have
be irrefutable
evidence, and it can't be something where a juror would have to reason the answer, right? And so I feel that part of the problem is because most of these instances happen behind closed doors, right? Witnesses aren't in the room when it's happening.
he said, she said.
It comes down to he said, she said, and then experts are looking at the behaviors of the child and what the child is reporting, what adults were around at the time that could testify to the behavior of the child, and
Reputation of others involved.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would just say, speaking for myself, as a therapist, I am very much not a children's therapist, and very much for a reason. I have nothing but respect for people who take that on, because kids are so slippery. Trying to understand their mental state, trying to help them develop a framework and a lexicon for how to talk about these types of experiences is incredibly tricky. And I applaud our system of government. I think it's an important value that we have, that people are innocent until proven guilty. But in these circumstances, anything said by a kid comes with a reasonable doubt attached to it. And so these are really tricky things to prosecute.
Right, and so I think, to your point, it's really important for adults to be trained to recognize the red flags of child sexual abuse, and for the people who are taking reports from children or from their loved ones to be trained in trauma-informed interviews and be trained in how to recognize the red flags, right? So when you have, so say you know a child, I'll just make it up, in your school, and one day they're happy, they're involved, they want to come and hang out with you at football practice, you name it, and then the next day they want nothing to do with the coach. They are depressed. They start
Acting out.
So there are all these symptoms that we know are characteristics of some trauma having happened to that child, and it's every adult's responsibility. It's even part of the Texas Penal Code that any person in the state of Texas who suspects any type of child abuse must report it. So there's a gap between clergy holding themselves above the law and what the penal code says. And so that's a gap that needs to be closed.
And those in the congregation feeling like if you are in an emergency situation, usually they say you need to point to a specific person and tell them to call 911. Don't say somebody call 911, because then no one will call 911.
Mm-hmm. That diffused responsibility.
Right. And in the same vein, saying the congregation of, well, somebody else I'm sure is looking into this. I'm sure somebody else has noticed this. Well, just because somebody else has noticed it doesn't mean they're doing jack shit about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So from my own personal survivor story, I was a little girl when I was abused, and it was by the Lutheran youth minister. And he took me on a camping trip with other adults. When he took me away from the campsite, the adults who were there didn't respond appropriately.
Right.
The next morning when I came running through the camp to go back to the car, the adults didn't respond appropriately. As a teenager, when I made an outcry to my family didn't respond appropriately. So the issue is not a children's issue. The issue is an adult issue. And adults responding appropriately when they see something, right? So to put the onus on a child to go talk and make a report to law enforcement is ludicrous.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can even say from my own personal experience, not related to abuse by a clergy member, but abuse by a neighbor, I noticed things were not, as a child, I noticed things were not right. And I said something to, related to a neighbor who was just a little bit older than me and her stepfathers, yada, yada, yada. And I said something to my parents, to which the response was, well, that's just not, there's no point in saying something if it's not a problem. Like, we don't want to say something and cause a stir if nothing's actually going on.
Right.
Let's look at the evidence here and look at the data and say, okay, statistically, likelihoods, yeah, let's hop on this and make sure the kid is okay rather than just sweeping it under the rug.
Well, and statistically, they victimize more than one person. So in the case of my perpetrator, he was formally removed from the roster 10 years after my abuse. And there were other people in the community that he was victimizing.
And that's one of the really terrifying things for me when we look at, just in Texas, just the people that the Archdiocese declared to be credibly accused. We're already talking about 286 people. So even at 10 victims each, which to me feels very conservative, and we should recognize that credibly accused does not mean guilty, but it does. It is very incredibly concerning, yeah. But even at 10, we're talking about 3,000 victims here in Texas alone. And as you said, SNAP is a global organization. This is a global issue, and that's just specifically talking about the church.
Right.
And so I guess to your point earlier about changes in the culture, I like that we're having these conversations. It feels incredibly depressing, but I wonder if
necessary.
And I wonder if anybody was having these conversations 20 years ago in the way that we are now.
Looking at how things went, I remember when the whole thing first came out. I was young when it all first came out by the the Spotlight Report, and that was just, how should I put it? Not surprising, even at my age, not surprising, but at the same time, just jaw-dropping. Because it's happening, but the sheer magnitude is so soul-crushing, if I can use that term. So yeah, I think it's a very important issue for us to talk about and to continue to press on. I know we've talked about it before, and we're talking about it again, and we will talk about it again in the future until something changes.
Well, and to that point, I think it's important to stress the reason that we talk about it is to do something about it. And one thing that we're doing just by having the conversation is to raise awareness, to raise, I guess, a certain level of comfort with having these discussions, to normalize these experiences a little bit. And I think that's incredibly valuable. But there needs to be more than that. So that being said, what kinds of programs does SNAP offer, and what can we be doing? I mean, I know we talked about what the next step ought to be from like a government level, but for our viewers and, honestly, for our largely atheist audience who's not a part of the church, what's our responsibility in protecting children?
And what can the individual person do to help?
Right. Well, one thing that everyone can do, they could go to the website. It's www.d2l.org. It's Darkness to Light. And they have online training. And this is also the same organization that our Texas educators have to take for their classes. And everyone can be trained on how to recognize red flags, how to be an upstander, be an active bystander, and how to report.
And you also have a hotline, do you not, for anyone who has been victimized?
SNAP has a hotline. It's manned like Monday through Friday. There's a National Sexual Assault hotline. It's 1-800-656-HOPE. And that's the RAIN National Hotline, and they are 7x24. So they can report or call that number for support, and they will talk them through how to report if that's the decision that if they're ready to do that. SNAP highly encourages people to make a report to law enforcement because we see so many cases where there's almost always more than one victim.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if your experience isn't necessarily prosecutable, there's still a responsibility to report in order to just shed light on a situation.
Right.
And possibly uncover other abuses toward other people.
Right. There's a SNAP supporter in Houston, Mike Norris. The church felt his accusation was not credible, and he filed a lawsuit, a civil suit. And when his civil suit was publicized, another victim came forward. And so together, the two of them were able to make a civil suit against him. Yep.
That is very good. And I do see that we do have on the screen d2l.org. And is that...
That's the website.
That's the website for SNAP.
That's the website for the training.
For the training, sorry. Please go and get the training. I'm going to do that this week because the worst thing I can imagine is seeing something, not recognizing it, and not saying anything. So, with that, would you guys like to get to another call?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's see here. Who's been waiting for a little while? Let's go to Malty. Malty, you are on the air.
Hey, thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. What would you like to talk to us about tonight?
Well, first, thank you so much for taking the time to putting the effort out to having Snap on your show. And dating secularly has been difficult for me. It seems like I'm trying to make religion or a heavy woo to be a deal breaker, but it's difficult to find somebody and to be open that early. It seems like. Do you have any suggestions? And I'm not, truthfully, not much into butt stuff, but if you want to be easing people's angst about that, we could talk about that too.
just easing on in, just very, very
Which is
carefully,
kind of how you should do it in the first
lot
place.
of lube.
So,
Take your time.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
I think as far as the dating goes, I can relate so very much to the struggle of dating or the attempt to date other secular people. I would say lead with it, because there's nothing worse than getting into a situation where, something that is so kind of important to you is held back until, you feel you're comfortable enough to say it. And then the other person goes, "Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought you were just really liberal." Well, never mind then. I usually lead with that, or at least it's actually the second line on my Tinder profile now.
Yeah, it helps. And telling people that you host a show for the atheist community of Austin, I've found that to be really effective. So maybe try that. But it depends on how you're meeting folks. I'm a big proponent. I've had good experiences with OkCupid, and that's definitely a big part of it.
And that does actually sort by religious affiliation.
Yeah, it allows you to put all that there. And, I feel as if there are not necessarily like litmus tests that I give people, but I mean, just in the course of conversation, I feel like it usually comes up pretty quickly. I mean, if somebody asks me halfway through the first date if I'm a Scorpio, because they don't date Scorpios,
I'm like,
then
I'm out.
I'm like, well, number one, yes, I am a Scorpio, and I guess that gives me permission to be an asshole. But also, come on, that's like, just get to know me as a person and don't apply your magic bullshit to me.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying. I think that it really comes down to just dating the same advice that we would give to anybody trying to meet anybody, and recognizing that it's okay for that to be an exclusionary criteria. If you're super into sports and want somebody who's going to enjoy that with you, then the more people you date, the more open you are about dating, the more comfortable you are, the more likely you are to find somebody who lines up with that ideal. And I think that your belief system, your values, that's all part of it. So whether it's, I love to hike, I love sports, I don't believe in magic, I mean, all of those things to me feel like
do Jesus.
They're part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's a specific, I only want to date atheist people, so much as there are, I only want to date people that I want to date, and they all happen to be atheists.
Yeah.
I mean, there are atheist-specific dating websites, I should mention. None of them look impressive to me personally.
I was not aware of this.
Yeah,
Please show me.
I'm forgetting the names, but there are like anti-Christian mingle type organizations, and the truth of it is they're all owned by the same organization, like Christian Mingle and J-Date and a lot of these very specific datings. They're all owned by the same folks. So we can talk about their corporate value system, but in any case,
I think it has to do with green.
Yeah, I would just say date and be upfront about who you are and what your values are. Ask thought-provoking questions.
Okay, and it sounds like I'm using your profile, using these internet dating apps is a good way of doing a first filter.
I think so. Online dating is certainly not the only way to date, but it is really becoming the most common. And I feel like it's something that people are almost secretive about, almost ashamed of. And if this show stands for anything, it's that we shouldn't be ashamed of the way we love or make love. And I would say that recognize that online dating is the most common way for people to meet folks now. The research is beginning to show that. The survey data is beginning to show that. So that being the case, it's not for everybody, but it may well be for you. And if you haven't tried it, do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Can I make one more maybe comment on what you were talking about with the last caller?
Yeah. Rapid fire. Hit us.
Sure. There is, I would say, a good reason to take another life, and that would be if there is if you are being assaulted and you or your body is being violated and you do not give consent to that, then that's when you have the right to protect yourself.
Yeah, it's self-defense
IDLH,
model.
immediate danger to health and life.
Well, not necessarily even that. Just if I do not give consent, then this thing should not, and I do not want this thing in my body. I'm speaking hypothetically, of course, as a male. But it just seems if a woman is assaulted, physically assaulted, however, someone says, I'm going to take your bone marrow because you're a perfect match, or your kidney or whatever, you have a right to defend yourself from that. It's crazy for me that my bodily secretion can take that right away from a woman. Just.
I think that's a really valid point. Yeah.
And anyway.
So,
thanks
thank
so
you
much for what you do, and thanks for your time.
Hey, absolutely.
course.
Appreciate you calling in.
Yeah, I would say that is a good point coming from a female.
Kind of another model for how to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's just so many things to unpack there. So many things. We're gonna have to do an episode on this at some point.
No question.
So, did you feel like taking one more call before we get back into the conversation about Snap?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple folks on the line.
Yeah. All right. Let's go with Trevor. Trevor, you are on the air.
Hi, Megan. Hi, Chrissy.
Hi.
Howdy.
Hi, guest.
Hello.
First of all, I love to say that I am very uncomfortable talking about the topic of sex, but a really good friend of mine told me that I should call in and open up, so I thought I would take her up on that suggestion. And so I'm a gay male, rather attractive, I might add, too.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Objectively
you very much.
true,
I work really
yes.
hard at it. I work really hard at it. Anyways, I've been really so again, it's been a topic that's always been like really uncomfortable for me and kind of just a private thing. And I was like in a room. I've had like I'm that guy. So I'm that guy that these assholes find and take advantage of and convince me that it's my fault, and I give them all sorts of money and blah 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 blah. But that's a whole other episode as well.
Yes.
But this last one was something else or something different. I met somebody, and so I was like, I guess for lack of other words, I was the other woman. I've never been in that type of relationship. So they had an open relationship, and it was a rather unhealthy open relationship, I might add.
Sure.
And I knew that. I knew what I was getting myself into. And so I found myself in this, I guess, involuntary polymorphic amora relationship, I guess. And so, I mean, and this person, this is how, I mean, it was like every part of him I found attractive, if that makes any sense. Everything, just, looks, body type, feel, touch, smell, everything. This is how compatible we were. He came from a very super religious family. I'm an atheist, and we would sit there and read the Bible and have these awesome conversations. That's how compatible we were. And the relationship went on for a little while, and all of a sudden it was like, boom, I got blocked on Facebook, and I just got completely cut off, and having just a really hard time. I think about him. It's been over a year. I think about him every day. There was one night where I remember sitting there in the kitchen, and I was like, I even prayed. I said, God, I will consider your existence and your life if he would just call me. That's how rock bottom I was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, and I still to this day cannot bring myself to hate him for what he did.
Sure.
And like, and I know hate's like one of those negative things, but like I can't bring myself to be angry with him. I can't to hate him, to get to put any blame on myself, or put blame on him. It's all on myself,
right?
And it's just like I'm stuck. I'm really stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like things that I don't feel comfortable talking about people to it, aside from all of Austin now. But it's like, how do I get unstuck?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like going to bars. I don't like like the flamboyancy of the gay community. That's not my thing. I'm not gonna say I don't like it, but it's just not my thing.
I hear that.
Right.
I'm not the type to go parading or wearing tight fitting clothing and flamboyant thing, even though I would look good in it. But still, it's just not my thing.
Right. And so you're wondering how to get back out there and how to start kind of getting over that ex and to get back out in the world?
I think the part I'm not so concerned about getting back in the world. I'm trying to reach closure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to get to closure.
Yeah. Standard rules apply. Ice cream, sad movies, exercise, dating apps, like that normal process, I think, is still really valuable. But without trying to, have like these psychic intonations into what you're saying, when I hear you speak, it really does stand out to me that you're uncomfortable talking about sex, and you mentioned that right there at the top, and then we're talking about how you're uncomfortable moving on from this relationship. And that kind of rigidity feels to me to be very connected. And I would suggest, it may not be.
That's interesting. That's really fascinating. I never even considered that.
Yeah, and I don't want to try and, therapize you over the course of a 5-minute phone call or try to make any assumptions or tell you about your life, but that strikes me as really interesting, and I might suggest that that's something that would be valuable to talk to a therapist or some other type of professional helper about, because I think that there could be something there that makes it difficult to move on. It makes it difficult to feel comfortable in that way.
Yeah, because I mean, like, it's not about getting out into dating and because I'm a guy, and I'm going to be honest, guys can have sex anytime they want to. I mean, that's just the way. Men are pigs. Men are nasty pigs.
I mean, there is the tyranny of hydraulics, but men tend to be pretty quick and ready to go. I hear you.
I tell you, when a few years ago, I was going through this really bad thing. I was, and this is stupid, and this is how stupid I was. I was going through this really bad battle with a veterinarian. He did something horrible to me, and I was like, wait a minute, gay guys like dogs. And so I went on one of those hookup sites and started telling my story. And you know what happened? People started unlocking their naked pictures to me, and I was like, oh my!
That's how you respond. That's how you yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and some guy goes, well, I don't know about your pet, but I have a leash, and I was like, I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, I hear that. I would say, if you go to a bar, you can kind of expect everybody's advice to be take a shot. If you go to a dating website, everybody's advice for how to move on is going to be, look at a dick. So, I would consider that, and I think
looking at the wrong places.
Yeah, getting into a therapist's office or something like that seems really valuable to me. So I might recommend considering that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate you giving us a call, and I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you so much. And can I want to have one comment on your topic tonight.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a little boy, I used to go to like a Catholic preschool. Now, I never was sexually abused, but I was left-handed, and that nun I remember beat the shit out of me to stop using my left hand. So there was physical abuse that goes on as well.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that culture of, again, it kind of comes down to respect for bodily autonomy and respect for children and respect for their point of view, their voice. I do feel like those things are connected. So, I hope that we're moving in the right direction.
Yep, but that really struck me as, like, again, no sexual abuse here, but she whip out that ruler faster than she would. Is like magic.
Yep.
Damn.
I have some relatives who experienced the same, but maybe 50 years earlier. So yeah, it's definitely another part of the systemic problem of the authority. But Trevor, thank you so much for calling, and
thank you guys. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
Absolutely.
And I'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So I did hear that you may need to be leaving us shortly. So Christy, do you have any other questions that you'd like to go through before we wrap up?
Yeah, I know we've talked about next steps. We've talked about what the government needs to be doing, about what individuals can be doing. But for anybody who is watching this tonight and is just feeling upset, we talked about the RAIN hotline. What are some other just tips for anybody who this is bringing up a lot of thoughts and feelings for?
The RAIN helpline is good because you can call and have someone to talk to. But talk to someone if you're comfortable doing that. Find someone to talk with. Self-care is always good. Chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
Exercise, sleep well, eat well. But really having a person to bounce off what you're feeling. Journaling can also help.
Those are, I think, some of normal therapeutic, strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can imagine this is bringing up a lot for folks out in the audience. So, yeah, we hope that you just take very good care of yourself and that you reach out and let somebody know if you need help being taken care of. And so I thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of that insight. Any final thoughts?
Have compassion for yourselves when you're being triggered by these conversations because it's normal.
All right. And I would say probably also when you think about if you were in a similar situation and you think about what you should do and you may have some negative thoughts towards yourself, think what would you tell someone if they were in a similar situation? The same applies to you. So find somebody and reach out. With that, Carol, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course, anytime. We do have one more call, but I do know you need to get skedaddle. So did you want to skedaddle and we'll take this last call?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. You have a great night.
Thank you.
All right. So, again, this Valentine's Day, we will be having a live show. And, Silas, roll the thing.
Make this Valentine's Day one to remember. It's time to get sexy. Live in Austin, Texas, an intimate performance by recording artist Shelley Siegel follows a live taping of Secular Sexuality. Food is included and drinks will be available for purchase. Get your tickets now by going to eventbrite.com and search for Secular Sexuality. That's eventbrite.com, search Secular Sexuality.
Well, there you. Do you want to scoot? Do I have cooties?
Nope. Okay. All right.
So, we do have one more call for the evening. Would you like to take it?
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin's been waiting patiently, so we'd love to hear from him.
Very patiently. Kevin, you are on with Megan and Christy.
Hey, Megan and Christy. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, not too bad. What's going on tonight?
So, I recently kind of came out as an atheist on on my social media and everything. I just wanted to kind of put it out there. I didn't want to mislead people when they're talking religion and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and congratulations. I know that can be kind of a tricky experience sometimes.
For sure.
Thanks. It wasn't so bad. Most people were pretty supportive, or, the worst I got was, we know you're an atheist and, we still love you. And I'm like, well, I don't think that should,
Didn't know the two were related, but thanks for bringing it up. That's
right?
okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of got me thinking, two times in my life I've had someone come out to me gay, and I know that can be a lot, more difficult. And so, when I was thinking about it, I realized, neither time I really handled it great. I don't think I did anything, too bad, but I think I could have handled it better.
Sure.
The thing that really breaks my heart is, both times, these were people that were good friends with me. I've known them for a year or two, and, they were absolutely terrified. And I'm thinking, what did I do to make them think that they should be afraid to get personal with me? I'm like a cis straight male, but so I don't really understand, but I know it's kind of a vulnerable thing to admit. So I guess I got two questions. My first question is, how can I make it, I don't want anyone to be afraid to come out to me. I don't want to push them to come out to me, but if they want to, I want them to kind of know that it's okay, that I'm going to be, it's not going to change how I feel, So my question is, how can I kind of make that clear, without trying to push anyone to do something like that? I don't want to be, forcing the issue, but I just want them to know that they don't have to be scared to talk to me about it, if they choose to.
Right. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Christy, but it's not so much saying you can, I suspect and you can tell me. It's more just displaying that you are supportive of the general position of being, gay or trans or bi or non-binary or whatever the label or area on the spectrum may be.
I don't know. I think it's about going through your phone and just texting people at random, hey, bro, you gay?
That was a joke?
No. Yeah, just wait for somebody to clip that, and now my career's over. No.
I'm doing that now.
Yeah.
Okay,
great.
Good.
I think that there are two things to remember. And number one is that for many, many people, for a lot of good reasons, it's always going to be scary to come out for the first time or to come out to somebody who doesn't know. And so recognizing that that's not about you and being okay with other people having an experience that might be an unpleasant one, wanting to, of course, be kind and compassionate and helpful during that situation, but knowing that their feelings, their experience is not your trauma, it's not your tragedy. And being respectful of that space, I think, is incredibly important. And then beyond that, I do think that there are things that you can be doing, and that is to just be very careful about who you are and how you communicate yourself. And it sounds like you are already aware of how you speak and how you present. And the reality is we live in a culture where it's very common and in many ways seen as acceptable to say, I don't like that taco place, that's gay. Or to, just very casually say things that are derogatory towards these marginalized people. And so being aware of how you come across to others and recognizing that that type of behavior is not acceptable and it is going to make people feel uncomfortable sharing these things with you. So being cognizant of those types of microaggressions and making sure that you keep them out of your mouth so people know that you are somebody who's an ally and who supports them.
Okay, that makes sense.
And you said...
So just kind of like... Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just trying to think, be aware of how I'm speaking and the terms I'm using, and just try to focus on more more positive language, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the example of calling something so gay is a little on the nose. There are much more subtle things that take a little bit of practice, and I don't think that your gay friends or your closeted gay friends are going to necessarily be angry with you because you ask your male friends, "Hey, do you have a girlfriend?" as opposed to, "Hey, are you dating somebody?" or "Hey, do you have a partner?" Or, it's about using that inclusive language and being careful about the way that the assumptions that you make and the way that you talk. That's not easy. And I think that people understand that, and people will be respectful of that so long as you're making an effort. And I do think it's important to make an effort to use inclusive language and to not ask your male coworker about their wife unless you know that they're married to a woman,
Right. Using spouse or significant other when, inquiring about a spouse or significant other and not assuming a gender or
even a number.
Right.
I mean, I know that we're getting a little far afield, but so often people will say, "Oh, I thought I met your girlfriend," and I'm like, "Well, I was talking about my other one,"
Right. Well, I mean, that was one of them.
Yeah, making space for that.
Okay.
And you said you had another question for us?
Yeah, it's related. I was just kind of like I said, my reactions weren't really ideal. I think the first time, my best friend in high school came out to me, I just kind of said, "Okay." I don't think that's exactly what he wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, like, what kind of things can I do after the fact to show that I'm supportive? Like, to me personally, if someone asked me how I felt personally about, homosexuality, I would just say kind of, I don't care. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like when I'm deciding.
Like
it's a non-issue.
It's not a factor, I take into account. But I don't think that that's a good answer to say either. So I'm just wondering, like, what kind of things can I do to make them feel like comfortable and accepted, if at all, once they've come out to me.
Mm-hmm.
In my situations, I've never had someone necessarily come out to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's always just been a kind of a from day one kind of, "Hey, this is who I am." And then, if I had any question, eventually it would come up in conversation, "Oh, my boyfriend, oh, my girlfriend," or, "Oh, whatever point of the conversation establishes.
Yeah.
And, you're like, "Okay, yeah," and just treat it like a non-issue. Treat it like it is normal.
Yeah, and I think the two things I would tack onto that is number one, recognizing that for a lot of people, their gender identity or their orientation is not just a non-issue. It's an important part of who they are. It's like that 90s model of saying, like, well, there are no black people and white people. I'm colorblind, and we're all the same. And we're not all the same. A lot of us see our racial identity as a really important aspect of who we are, and that extends over to these other identifiers. So for some folks, being gay is a really important part of who they are. So to just say, "Okay," can come across as a little bit dismissive, even if to you that's not a important identifier. So making some space for that, recognizing that, this may be a really important thing that they've just shared, especially if they've been in the closet and they're coming out to you for the first time. But beyond that, the other thing I think it's really important for allies to remember is that as much as you are a part of shaping this world, particularly folks that are in the dominant culture have a responsibility to be kind and compassionate and aware, and to utilize their privilege well, to recognize that this isn't your fight. And as much as you want to be an ally, the most important thing that you can be doing is to just be decent and kind. Vote like every life matters. Be generous to people and be concerned. And it sounds like you are. And I think that that's genuinely 98% of the battle, is just being aware and being concerned about the rights of all people. Beyond that, I don't know that you want to, start waving around your rainbow flag in hopes that your gay friends are going to come out to you. I would just encourage you to be yourself and to be very human and to be kind and not to overthink the rest of it too much. Am I communicating that well?
I think so.
Yeah.
I would say be kind, like you were saying, be kind and make it clear that you are an ally in general.
Sure.
In your normal conversation, like Christy was saying, in that way, be kind toward others. Be kind in your conversation with someone. Be kind toward the third party you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Be kind when you're discussing the topics, whether it's about the person you're talking to or about a topic you read about in the newspaper. But just use that to show your compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I really appreciate you guys taking my call, and I really appreciate everything y'all are doing with the show. I only came across it this week, and I was really happy to see, open discussion about sexuality from, an atheist perspective. This is something that the world needs more of, and I really appreciate the work you guys are doing.
Hey, well, glad to hear it. Thank you so much.
Why we're here.
Yeah, we appreciate you giving us a call.
Thank you. You guys have a good one.
Thank you too.
My goodness, this has been a loaded day.
Yeah, real whirlwind of emotion, to be honest with you. We've covered a wide range of things.
Very wide range. I mean, and that's not to say it's a bad thing. I think we did pretty well today covering that wide range there.
But
I think Carol did have to leave us a little early. Mm-hmm. But going back to what she was saying, I think it's important for us to leave off tonight going back to SNAP and what that represents and what that is for, and the need that is out there for people to realize that they are not alone, that things will not change unless they speak up. And that can start as simple as just finding someone you trust to talk to and go from there. You can't keep this kind of thing bottled up forever. It'll eat you from the inside out.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's true. And, we, of course, we've talked about the RAIN Network and these other survivors organizations in addition to SNAP, and definitely want to put that forward. But I would also suggest that there's incredible value in counseling. I know as a therapist, I'm, very much biased to that idea. But I hope that in all of this conversation and really everything that we do here at Secular Sexuality, it is just about pulling back the veil and taking away a lot of the shame. Mm-hmm. It's a truism that you really can't learn and grow and change when you're coming at things from a shame perspective. Right. There's a certain stuckness that comes along with trying to hide everything. And so whether we're talking about butt stuff or whether we're talking about abuse or these different things, and I don't mean to be glib in putting those together, but I think that it's very much the mission of this program to encourage people to just have conversations, to feel comfortable talking about these things, whether it's their orientation and sharing that with a friend or their past traumas and experiences.
Mm-hmm. I can't say it any better than that. So with that, Christy, are you ready to head out for the night? Yeah,
it's been like you said, a kind of a whirlwind day.
I think you said that, but yes.
It's been a good time. So Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope to see all of you on Valentine's Day.
Yes, here in Austin live.
Yeah, and that link is bit.ly, bit.ly/secular sexuality for tickets.
It was up on the screen and will be in the show
Yes,
notes.
it will be. Great. So we hope to see you all there, and thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Would you like to?
Yeah. So let's do it. Whether it's, I don't know why we keep coming back to this, but whether
Pasties?
it's whether it's wearing pasties, whether it's in the butt, whether it's gay or straight, whether you're an ally or you're poly, we just want to encourage everybody watching tonight to go out and give themselves a big old orgasm, or better yet, give somebody else one.
Hey.